Nice Micro Monday, the Snapification of Firefox on Ubuntu. So, there is another web browser in the news recently. Last week we were talking about the Vivaldi browser on Manjaro. This time we are talking about Firefox on none other than everyone's favorite Ubuntu. And this step that Ubuntu, or Canonical rather, decided to put the Firefox browser into a Snap package instead of the native deb package, that shows a lot of issues. First of all, this is another sign that it is relatively untenable to have a release schedule, like a stable release schedule, the like of Ubuntu has, which means that every 6 months they will come out with a new release, and 3 of these, so in 2 years you have 4, and 3 out of these 4 will be supported for 9 months, and 1 will be supported for 5 whole years, and you can even buy 5 more years, making it up to 10. But if we just talk about the free supported ones, in the worst case scenario, they can have 3 long-term releases running and 2 short-term releases running at the same period of time. But even in the best case scenario, they have 2 long-term releases and 1 short-term release running. And of course, all these releases will be having different versions of not just the kernel, but a lot of underlying user space things that user-facing applications like your file manager and your web browser will be dependent on. And of course, when it comes to a file manager, no one cares, because you can just use the same version of file manager unless there is a very serious security issue with it. You can use it for the whole 5 years, so maybe they don't need to update it any time during that 5 year. But when it comes to web browser, we know that web browsers need to be patched anytime something fishy turns out about them. So keeping a web browser that your newest version is a very important thing. And well, it seems like Canonical got tired of compiling the newest version of Firefox every 2 weeks, every 1 month, for up to 5 different Ubuntu versions. So they just decided to snapify it, and they will be moving to the Snap package distribution instead of the native deb package distribution. And I know this is like one of my pet peeves, one of my nitpicks against the Linux community, how a lot of Linux content creators, or Linux commentators, I should say, will talk about like the deb packages and RPMs and then package managers and then package repositories in a way that is not really clear and kind of confusing, and that results in a lot of casual Linux users don't really understanding this whole process, how you get software installed on a Linux system. But let's not go deep into that. I already made some videos about this, which you can find somewhere. And the thing is, it doesn't matter. The important thing is not that it was a deb package. The important thing is that Firefox has been and is still, I guess, provided on Ubuntu as a native package, which is a native binary, a binary that has been compiled against the dependencies, the other binaries that's already on your system. And of course, depending on which version of Ubuntu you have, these binaries will be different versions. So your Firefox, even its newest version, the binary will be slightly different because it's built against different versions of some of those dependencies. And Ubuntu or Canonical doesn't want to do this anymore. And in a Snap package, you don't just have Firefox, you also have this arbitrary number of dependencies packed into one, which of course you already have different versions of those underlying dependencies on your system. So now you will have it duplicated, and your Firefox package that was in a native package was this small, and the one in the Snap package will be this big. And this would be the same with Flatpaks and deb images, so that doesn't really matter. A lot of people don't like snaps, but in this aspect it doesn't really matter which one you use. You will have duplication, but you can say, well, I don't care, my computer has a lot of empty space in its SSD or hard drive, and my computer has a lot of RAM and a lot of processing power, so I don't care about the overhead that using this very heavy way to deliver software, the Snap system uses. I don't care about that. If the Canonical want to packages like that, I don't care. So yeah, you don't have to care about that, of course. But there is not just the technical aspects, not just the performance aspects of this, but also there is the aspect that, which I guess I've been using Linux for 2 years, and this aspect have maybe changed, or maybe I'm just listening to different people than I used to. So when I came to Linux, it was kind of an advantage of the Linux platform that you get software not directly from the developers, but through the distribution package maintainers. So in case of Ubuntu, Canonical will get the source code, they will compile it to a binary, and if they find something in the source code they don't like, they can change it, they can customize it before giving it to users, which is contrary to how Windows, you used to just download install.exe and just double click and whatever was in it got installed to your system. And when I decided to start using Linux as my operating system on my home computer, my personal computer, then it was one of the reasons, and Joe Collins was talking about it a lot back then when he was making Linux content. I'm not sure what he's doing recently, but the people I recently listened to, they just kind of think about this extra step of having the repository maintainers as kind of a hurdle, which, I mean, it requires extra manpower, but they think it doesn't worth it. It just keeps the Linux adoption back because, well, every distribution almost, well, not everybody, but a lot of distributions will have their own underlying dependency trees, and so everyone has to compile a different binary from the same software, which of course, fair enough, but I mean, this way I only have to use, so I use Arch Linux on my computer, so I only have to trust that the Arch Linux packagers will do a decent enough job and won't package malware in there, so everything I download from the central repositories of Arch Linux, I don't have to trust each and every software developer that are making the software. And if you are interested in this kind of trust issues with the centralized distro agnostic or universal packaging schemes, then I suggest you to read the blog post called Maintainers Matter, which have been brought to my attention through the Arch forums a while back, and I already mentioned it in a previous video, and you can find a link to that in the description if you are interested. So basically what we can say is that Ubuntu or Canonical doesn't want to do the 5 separate versions, so they went for a version, or went for a system where they only have to do one version, and they don't even have to do one version because it's not Canonical who packages the Snap packages, it is the developer themselves. So Mozilla can just package whatever they want and just put it in the Snapification, which is what I decided that I will call the Snap repositories. So they just put it in the Snapification, which is a centralized thing, and it is run by Canonical, and a lot of people hate it because, well, at least in Flatpaks, everyone can have their own flat repository or flatpository, but Snapification is only for Canonical. But still, from the trust perspective, Canonical, there is nothing they can do proactively. They can be reactive, and if malware gets into this Snapification, they can remove it later or something like that. And what else? Yeah. So this is what my personal gripe is with this situation, and of course this will affect a lot of distributions that are based on Ubuntu, because we know that a lot of people make Linux distributions when they just get everything from the Ubuntu repositories. They don't want to maintain their own repositories, and when Ubuntu does something or Canonical does something they don't like, they'll just throw a fit about it or something. I'm just, of course, this was a sarcastic comment, but yeah, so this is what will happen. And I guess if you don't use Ubuntu, then it won't matter to you. But I guess it's an important thing to understand the kind of issues that come with these so-called universal package managers, not just from the technical issue of them maybe being slow or introducing additional bugs in your system that wouldn't be there without them, but also from this very general trust issue of where do you want to trust each and every developer who makes the software, or do you like the version where the distributor of the operating system has kind of the final say what gets onto your computer, and have like an additional layer of, guarantees, I guess, that you won't get malwared on your system. So I think I said everything I wanted to say. Nice Macro Monday. Snapification of Firefox on Ubuntu. See you next time. Bye.